In this episode of Ottawa Business Journal's Behind the Headlines, waiting for downtown office workers to return, Salesforce plants its flag in Kanata, and a creative solution to the pandemic-induced shortage of home exercise equipment. All this and more coming up right now. Behind the Headlines is brought to you by Nelligan Law. Their profession is the law, their product is peace of mind. Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines for the week of May 24th, 2021. I'm Michael Kern from the Ottawa Business Journal. Behind the Headlines is a regular podcast from OBJ to explore the biggest and most popular business stories of the day. I'm happy to have two of my colleagues from OBJ with me again here today, Peter Kavesi and David Sally. Hello to you both. Our first story carried the headline, Waiting for the Workers to Return. It was, in fact, a column written by Ron Corbett, who's a new columnist with OBJ, written a few columns for us at this point. The column was about the fact that Ottawa's downtown is largely vacant, certainly when it comes to workers. There are a few people, but not many for sure. Downtown is looking at anything but normal. And Dave, I'm going to go to you for this question first. Dave, this has given kind of rise to the legion of forgotten retailers. So, of course, if there are no workers downtown, that means all of those little coffee shops, little retail boutiques, they're basically getting no business. And in fact, some of them are temporarily closed. Tell us about what's happening in the downtown core, Dave.
Well, Mike, in a couple of words, not much right now. As anybody who's taken a stroll downtown right now knows that, typically you go downtown and on a weekday afternoon, there's going to be tons of traffic on Bank Street, people walking around, milling around, especially in weather like this that we've had lately. Anybody knows right now who's been downtown that it is not the case at all. It's pretty much a desert when it comes to business traffic at the moment. And as you mentioned, Ron Corbett, I talked to some people about that, including a businessman in the Sun Life Financial Center, right on the corner of Bank and O'Connor. Normally a building that has thousands of people flowing through it every day. Well, Mahmoud Syed is the owner of the Elegant Man Barber Shop. He's had the shop for 11 years. And he told Ron that, on a good day before the pandemic, he'd have easily 20 customers or more. Now, a really good day might be 4 customers. And a lot of days he doesn't even get that. There's no one going through that business tower anymore. It's basically been emptied out. Everybody's working from home. And he kind of feels, like he's kind of been forgotten right now. It's really hurt him and all kinds of his fellow business owners. I guess Kevin McHale, he's the executive director of the Spark Street BIA. He said it's like 2 different worlds right now, downtown in the suburbs. Everybody's working out in the burbs now, and then you come downtown. And it's just you could see tumbleweeds practically blowing down the street. Shuttered businesses all over the place with paper in the windows, and the numbers aren't good. Dean Karakassis from the Building Owners and Managers Association noted that normally there might be 5% a vacancy in downtown office towers. Now you're looking at 25% in terms of the workers that are missing. So it's just a huge difference. And what's going to happen? Are more companies going to keep moving out? We don't know. And for people, for business people like Syed, it's been really tough. He hired somebody last March, just before the pandemic hit, had to call him back a week later and say, sorry, I don't need you. And he doesn't know what his future is going to be. And like he says, it's out of my hands. And I'm sure he is not the only one who's feeling that way right now, Mike.
Well, on the limited occasions when I'm downtown, I only see security guards walking around, and unfortunately some homeless people. So that's not a very great situation downtown. Peter, there's not really many answers when it comes to filling up. The vaccines continue to roll out with good momentum. But what are some of the strategies that we could be looking at downtown?
Well, there's really, I guess a short term and a long term strategy. So, in the short term, of course, the biggest tenant in the downtown core is the federal government. So, what a lot of business advocates in the Spark Street BIA in particular are asking for is just some communication, some messaging from the federal government about what a post-pandemic return to work might look like, about how many people would come back, what would trigger the return to offices, just so businesses in the area can have a bit of, I guess, a bit of a glimpse into the future about what the downtown core might look like when it comes to the number of office workers. Long term, what a lot of people are saying is that the downtown core needs more diversity. That we need more residents to balance off the office workers that would be there, in pre-pandemic times. Now, I think all of us at one point in time have written about, efforts to try to get more people in the downtown core, make it a 24/7 place without, the dead time on Saturdays and Sundays. So of course that is easier said than done. But, something I found really, really fascinating, and, we talked about this prior to the pandemic, is that there were more than a few Class C office buildings in the downtown core prior to the pandemic that were being converted into residential buildings, which is really, really fascinating. And, something we've all heard and, talking to people is that the pandemic in a lot of cases accelerated some trends that were already underway prior to the arrival of COVID-19. So I think it's going to be really, really fascinating that if there is a permanent, long-term reduction in the demand for office space, if that might spur some more conversions and finally, I guess, really accelerate the rate at which new residents are starting to live in the downtown core, which would totally reshape the identity of our central business district.
I'm really curious to see if those conversions will keep on happening, because I think it's somewhat reasonable to expect there'll be some shrinkage in the need for downtown office space. And again, it might lead to more momentum around those conversion from commercial to residential, given the fact, what's happening on the residential side. Story number 2, by the way, and let's move to that one, involves one of the world's biggest software companies coming to Kanata, sort of. California-based Salesforce has signed up in a really interesting project from Kanata North Business Association. Salesforce is not going to have a physical office, but it's going to be the sponsor of a new meeting and hub, I guess is what they're calling it. Dave, tell us about what's happening out there in Kanata North.
Well, Mike, as you mentioned, Salesforce doesn't currently have a presence in Kanata. And it is, it's certainly a sought after commodity, so to speak. If you're the Kanata North Business Association, you would love to have a company like Salesforce have a footprint in the Kanata North Business Park. As you know, Mike, it's a huge company. It's got that towering headquarters now in San Francisco, the tallest building in the city. Down there, employs 50,000 people around the world. Has offices in Toronto and Vancouver, but not Ottawa yet. But the Canada North Business Association is hoping that its new partnership with Salesforce might lay the groundwork for Salesforce and other Silicon Valley tech giants to set up shop in Canada North. So Salesforce recently signed on as a 3-year deal to sponsor Hub 350, it's called. That's the new collaboration space, meeting space at Mitel's former headquarters, actually, at 350 Leggett Drive. Hence the name Hub 350 is what they're calling it. So it's about a 12,000 square foot facility. And Salesforce, as a sponsor, is going to be involved. They're going to feature prominently in the KNBA's marketing efforts for Hub 350, but they're also going to offer their expertise. They're going to probably provide seminars for KNBA members in the space, and they're actually going to be involved in a new leadership council aimed at chief information officers and chief technology officers from Canada-based firms. So the KNBA is really hoping that this kind of let's say is the first step in Salesforce's involvement in the tech park, which has, of course, more than 500 tech firms down there right now, including a lot of big multinationals. But they're really hoping that this might start a bit of a domino effect, might trigger some other companies from Silicon Valley to also take a look up here and say, there's a lot going on in that Kanata North Tech Park. Maybe we should be there. So and the sponsorships keep coming at Hub 350. Earlier this week, Mitel actually also announced, not surprisingly, since Hub 350 is in its former headquarters, so Mitel has also signed on as a sponsor, and they're going to be involved in programming there as well. So Hub 350 is expected to open up later this summer, and hopefully there's going to be lots of good things to come and more collaborations. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more sponsorships announced in the coming weeks as well, Mike.
Yeah, it kind of plays into that shared office space component. So it'd be neat for people in businesses and entrepreneurs in Canada North to come together on that hub. Listen, Peter and Dave, before we explore our last story of the day, I want to bring in our legal expert from Nelligan Law, one of our sponsors of Behind the Headlines. Please welcome Brian Thaw, lawyer in the firm's Real Estate and Development Practice Group. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Listen, Brian, we were just talking a few minutes ago with a couple of our editors about how downtown Ottawa is looking very empty these days. I made the joke that there's security guards wandering around, and that's about it. And we know that, vaccinations are rolling out and that there will be a gradual return to downtown offices. However, I think both of us could agree, Brian, that there's a possibility at least that there will be less commercial space needed by both private sector and public sector clients. That raises the question, Brian, about what landlords will do with that space if it's underutilized. One idea, Brian, that I'm going to ask you about is that possibly some of this commercial space could be transformed into residential space. Any thoughts on that?
You're exactly right, Michael. And I'm already starting to see it now where commercial spaces are starting to be looked at, especially older buildings where their natural life cycle is starting to come to an end, where instead of investing in just capital expenditures, they're thinking about, well, what can we do with this building beyond just commercial? And I think owners of these types of buildings, especially ones in the downtown core, are starting to say to themselves, well, maybe there's another use, and that use is residential. Whether it is residential rentals, which I think will be the biggest demand, or if owners of these buildings decide to condominiumize these buildings so that they could sell off residential units down the road. Or another option, which I wouldn't be surprised if we also see, is mixed use, which is converting the existing building into both a residential and commercial building. So it has multi-purpose for the owner of the building.
That seems to be a good idea too. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's to have multi-purposes for things, because you never know when one of those purposes is going away. So an example is that we see some kind of hotels and apartment buildings, right? So they'll have a mix of that. But Brian, what I also wanted to ask you about something else that's going on in the city, and that is a healthy debate around the city's official plan. So, the city is looking way down the road in 2021 and seeing that Ottawa's population could increase significantly to 1.4 million. So there is kind of an ongoing debate about, where do we put all these new people? And that might play into some of these conversions. Share your thoughts on that, Brian.
Well, in November, the city released its draft official plan, and in there, they said that they see the city growing by about 400,000 people between now and 2046. And one of the central tenets of the official plan is that the city would like 60% of that growth to be within the existing urban boundary and utilizing infills within the city, instead of green fields or undeveloped farmland outside the urban boundary.
So we have a couple, as you're indicating, we get a couple trends here. We got a trend potentially for less commercial space, and we have a city desire, right, for mixed use, more urbanization, and all of that. That's great. Thank you very much, Brian. We appreciate you sharing your legal advice with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
All right, let's go to our third and final story of this podcast episode. It involves entrepreneurs pumping concrete, and when I say pump, imagine someone doing arm curls there. It's an interesting story. It's about two local residents who have a side hustle, as they say, to make custom dumbbells and barbell plates. If you've been involved in that world, you know that one of the things that you can't get, I mean, earlier in the pandemic was can't get toilet paper. Now you can't get gym weights. So, Peter, let's bring you back on the screen here and tell us about Garage Gym Guys. What a name.
Well, as you mentioned, this is just another one that the fascinating and I guess not surprising until you really think about it, but the odd supply shortages that we've seen over the last year. You said first was toilet paper. I think we've talked on this podcast about how tricky it was to get a bicycle earlier this spring. Now that summer is upon us, I know, Dave, you've been talking to some builders about the shortage of lumber. But gyms and fitness centers, they've been open, they've been closed, reduced capacity for their customers. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. And that's pushed a lot of them towards setting up their own home gyms, their own home exercise setups, which means that there's no equipment out there. And so these two entrepreneurs, they have backgrounds in project management. They couldn't get anything online from the traditional sources. And then they were just shocked at the resale prices that people were putting used dumbbells and weights up on Kijiji. And they said, I'm sure we could do better than this. So they did a lot of experimenting with various concrete formulas, concrete molds before finally arriving on something. And they're selling these customized weight kits. They tell me that what they're seeing online is weights selling for about $3 to $6 a pound. They can sell theirs for $1.50 a pound and offer all sorts of customized options. And so far, it's been a hit. They said that the first day that they started advertising, they received some 30 orders totaling $2,000. What's going to be really interesting to see is, again, hopefully, there is some light at the end of the tunnel as the vaccines roll out, whether this is going to be a permanent shift in consumer behaviors. So again, I think, we've all heard of like Peloton, and the rise in the home exercise world. So whether or not this is going to be a permanent shift, creating permanent opportunities, but for Garage Gym Guys, they can't keep up with demand, and they're actually looking at expanding into a new manufacturing facility.
Well, we love entrepreneurs seeing opportunities and taking quick action. I think I've seen this on social media platforms and that, how to build your own weight. So, Dave, we're going to bid adieu to you, but keep Peter here. And Peter, you're going to tell us about a big project, an annual launch that we have coming up in just a few days.
So, this is one of my favorite projects that we do every year, the Welch LLP Ottawa Business Growth Survey. So earlier this spring, we went out and surveyed hundreds and hundreds of business leaders just about the opportunities for Ottawa in a post-pandemic economy, really focusing around the theme of how can Ottawa build back better. As well, we asked questions about their business confidence, their outlook for their particular industry, how their company's financials have fared over the last year, and a lot of questions about their outlook, their office space needs, even shifts in residential real estate demand. So we put all this together in a report that's currently being printed, and we're going to officially launch that on June the 3rd at a virtual event that we're all working on now. So we really encourage you, please go to obj.ca/events to find all the information about the launch of the Ottawa Business Growth Survey. Please register, attend the launch, and make sure to get a copy either in print or download the digital edition on June the 3rd.
It's going to be a great launch. You and the team, Peter, have done just a fantastic job at putting that report together. We're very eager to share it with local business leaders. So that's all the time we have for today. A reminder that this podcast can be heard or watched in various ways. Since some of you might be watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon to get a notification on your mobile device or computer when we are live. You can also listen to the podcast on platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google, SoundCloud, Twitch, so on and so forth. And I encourage you, of course, if you're really, like us, passionate about local business, go to obj.ca website, where we update the news, constant business news, local business news updated throughout the day. And to make sure you never miss a headline, you can subscribe to our weekday, Monday to Friday, email newsletter, OBJ Today. On behalf of my colleagues, Peter Kavesi and David Solly, thank you for tuning in. Stay healthy and please stay connected. Bye-bye.